Welcome to 1.5, which we're going to talk about scatter plots and correlation. So our learning targets are to determine the correlation between two variables and to identify correlation using a scatter plot. So when we talk about scatter plots, we're going to focus on the independent variable and the dependent variable. So the independent variable is the x, and that represents the input of the function. The dependent variable is the y, which represents the output of the function. And we call it the dependent variable because it depends on the input. Whatever we get for y depends on what we put in for x. And we're going to create these scatter plots, which are just graphs that relate two sets of data by pairing the data as ordered pairs. So when we talk about correlation, the closer the data points fall, the stronger the relationship. So an example of a positive correlation would be something like studying, right? The more you study, the better you do in class, right? The better your grade. So as the x increases, the y also increases, okay? They're both increasing. An example of a negative correlation would be the more that you exercise, the less body fat you have. So in this situation, the x is increasing, the y is decreasing. And when we look at these correlation patterns, we have a couple examples down here. First, in the middle, we can see that there's really no correlation in that one. The points really just look random. Okay, when we go to the right of that, we see positive correlation with either this shows a weak positive correlation because the line isn't very, it's not very strong, whereas this is a strong positive correlation. We can see the trend very well. And then just like a negative correlation. So again, as x increases, y decreases. We have a strong negative correlation or a weak negative correlation. So let's look at these examples. We're just going to describe the correlation of these points. So as x is increasing, y is also increasing. So that is a strong positive correlation. Okay, with the second one, they kind of just like look like they're all over. So that's a no correlation. There's no real way to tell whether it's increasing or decreasing. Okay, the next one, as x increases, y is decreasing. So that's a negative, and that's a strong negative. We can really see that. And then this last one, we can see that x is increasing and y is increasing. However, it's not as strong as the first one, so we're going to call this a weak positive. We can see the trend, but it's just not as close as the first one. Okay, in this example, I'm giving you a situation. I say, as the age of a car increases, its value decreases. So we're going to look at these scatter plots to try and figure out what represents this relationship. So first I'm looking for, as x to increase, its value, y, decreases. So as the age increases this way, I need y to come down. So it's not going to be a. This looks like I start high and low. So that looks like it's decreasing. This one looks like it's increasing. So that's a no. And then this one kind of D doesn't really do anything. So B is the correct answer, right? Again, as I move along the x-axis, so as my age increases, my value is decreasing. So that's that negative correlation that we looked at. Okay, and lastly, we're just going to sketch this scatter plot. It's pretty straightforward. We have our ordered pairs, or we have our data. We're going to graph them as ordered pairs. So in your packet, you should be able to see that the shoe size represents, the left column represents the United States, and the right column represents the European. So we're going to label our two axes as United States and European, and then we're just going to graph our points. So label, I'm going to label my sides there, and then let's start at 30 here. And if we go up by 2s, that will get us to 40. Okay, this right here tells us that there's a jump in the axes, so it's not representative to scale of from 0 to 30, and that's what that's showing us. So I'm going to graph my first ordered pair as 1, 31, second ordered pair as 3, 34, third ordered pair as 5, 36, 7, 39, which is right here, 9, 41, and 11, 44. And then since the scatter plot, I just leave it, and that's it. Okay, so that's it for 1.5, which is just scatter plots and correlation.